Team Sonic Racing one-shot. It starts out with Sonic, Shadow, and friends of his behind him driving in race cars on a track, as there's detached narration about it stating the blatantly obvious, although I don't see the Wisp power-ups, so that needed to be said. The narration says, "Here we are, Team Sonic," but I'd rather it say, "Here I am, Sonic." I don't know who's doing the narration. If it's gonna have detached narration at the start like a novel, I'd rather it say, "Here's Team Sonic." The boring narration says they're racing for an eccentric man named Dodon Pa who looks weird. I can't tell what species he's supposed to be, so his design sucks, but I guess I like his mustache. None of them know where he comes from or why he hosts races. Wouldn't that be the case for anybody hosting a Grand Prix? Of course the heroes don't know that stuff about a total stranger. That wouldn't guarantee that he's a bad guy. Now, if it's saying this as if literally no one knows where he comes from, well, all somebody would have to do to find out is Google him on the internet. Maybe he has amnesia. Unless he's an alien, that's the only way it makes sense that nobody would be able to find out about his past. It's not even his real name. The speculation about this guy from fan is more interesting than the so-called story right now. Narration stating the obvious with a story in media res so that I don't know why the heroes even started the stupid race in the first place is not going to get me to care about the story. It does seem like Dodon Pa is evil because he laughs as he wonders if Sonic or Shadow will survive. And he calls them Blue Hedgehog and Black Hedgehog in a detached way. Even though he should know who they actually are, because they be celebrities for good reason. He'd have to be an alien to not know them. But I've already watched the Team Sonic Racing in Minutes parody video, so I know this guy's twist by the end of the story. He says they're both pretty good and Tails is losing. I guess he and Knuckles only care about trying to win for the sake of winning, because I certainly don't know why they bothered doing a race otherwise. Don't they have hero stuff to do? This is no better than Sonic Drift's plot. Only worse because that didn't waste our time with dialogue from the characters in a completely bare-bones plot. Tails says they've got the team score to think about, so how do they know what the team score is at all times? I guess they don't. I don't see a screen in front of them. I guess they know the rules, so they know how to increase it. But I don't know the rules because I've never played the game. So, for anyone who hasn't played the game, it doesn't get you invested and get you to care about what Tails is saying because they're not being told how they're supposed to increase a team score. What are they doing right? If this is supposed to be out to advertise the game, then it shouldn't assume you already know about the game. Knuckles says he can handle Omega in his power type racer, but more matters than how many miles per hour they drive. He counts on someone to outwit Rouge with technique type car skills. Like what? I can't wait to see that, instead of just cars driving ahead. It's cute how they think they can beat speed type racers with their pathetic other cars. They're really embarrassed and trying to justify having non-speed type cars. Tails says that he's noticed everyone's car has a unique slipstream, so it might be the key to using kinetic contact to their advantage. Sonic snarks that they should call Tails Brains instead of Tails. Yeah, because he doesn't use his tails very much by comparison. In Fleetway, he was flying with them constantly. I've been rereading a lot of that from the beginning lately. It's a lot more constantly fascinating than this. Dodon Pa reveals that he can talk to the racers through their cars. Why would he put that in there? Wouldn't that risk distracting them while they're driving so that they might crash and get hurt or killed? He was wondering if they would even survive. So this whole race thing has to be unsanctioned, illegal, and completely unsupervised by authorities, because otherwise the race would be made safer. Though racers do die in NASCAR. Shadow says there's other ways to get ahead, like resourcefulness, and causes an explosion because of his Wisp, because Dodon Pa is evil enough that he doesn't care if the heroes get destroyed and Eggman takes over the world or not. Does he just not live on that world so he can't get inconvenienced? Or is he a complete idiot? He's not a believable character. And using a Wisp isn't hard and doesn't require any thought. That's not really resourcefulness. Shadow's talking as if his car isn't a speed type, and he's demonstrating what technique-style cars can do. But obviously he is a speed type. So, maybe a technique-style racer should have used the Wisp. Wasn't that the obvious idea? Like, shouldn't they have the resourcefulness? Knuckles' car impacts Rouge, except there's no actual impact drawn. Instead, there's just a lame flash of light. So where's the catharsis against Rouge? It makes no sense that the artist would censor this, because I'm sure the actual game does show the cars impacting each other. So I don't really care about what I'm seeing here. Omega says a boost is detected, and Rouge thanks Knuckles for the boost, and asks if he's on her team sarcastically. Huh? I've never played the game, by the way. If I wanted Mario Kart, I'd play Mario Kart. I like the items better there. I'm already familiar with them. When I look at this Wisp, I don't know what I'm looking at. I'm guessing it's the Frenzy Wisp because it's purple? The average person won't know what the Wisps do in the game compared to a shell, a star, a fire flower, a ball and chain chomp. I like the self-aware moment that Knuckles has. He calls himself a knucklehead, and Tails tells him to not beat himself up. And he gets an idea from the fact that he discovered the boost for them. Sonic says that Don Pa invited them to race. That guy is a hard name. Don Pa sounds just as likely of a name for him at that point. Why couldn't it be Dodo Pa and be a dodo bird? And then Eggman's vehicle drives near Sonic, and Eggman says he's here as a special guest. But Dodon wants to contradict him. So he's fine with getting heroes killed, but wasn't fine with inviting Eggman? He finds Eggman's insistence on proving he's the coolest amusing. Shadow and Sonic bore me, and Eggman asks how they're so close already because he cheated so awesomely. The story sucks. I'd rather see him do that cheating. Wasn't that obvious? I barely remember the plot I got so far. It was just characters driving ahead. I'm sure the racing episode in AOSDH was a lot more interesting to look at, being cartoony and over the top. Obviously we should have seen all the different ways Eggman cheated to get ahead in the race. Then we'd know how the hell he got so close to Sonic out of nowhere when he was nowhere to be found before. I hate how boring this story is from the absolutely bare-bones plot that does nothing the game wouldn't do. It makes it harder to motivate myself to read all the dialogue. Gee, I wonder if Sonic will win, making rooting for the other characters pointless. Eggman asks for help and says he doesn't have a team yet. Why not? Why didn't he have a bunch of robots be his team? Like Metal Sonic and Knuckles. He says that some Wisps might help, and Eggman says cheating rules as some more item boxes show up on Planet Wisp. Good thing Dodon told me that they were on Planet Wisp, because I never would have guessed from this generic grass field they're driving around a racetrack in. Maybe that's something I should have been told at the start of the story. Sonic wonders if Dodon wants Eggman to win. I just can't feel like it's in character for Shadow to be this obsessively competitive with Sonic. I keep trying to give IDW Shadow a chance, but this would be a better fit for Sonic's evil twin than him. He felt more dignified and composed in Sonic Adventure 2. This guy is absolutely nothing like that one. He's immature and childish instead of mature and composed. Eggman lampshades things, saying he's glad the Wisps aren't holding a grudge against him for Sonic Colors. Except he shouldn't be saying this out loud, reminding them of what he did and guaranteeing they'd be mad at him. For all he knows, these are Wisps that were completely secluded from what happened in Sonic Colors. Like Dodon's Wisps specifically. Eggman can't even remember what they all do. One of them even glares at him from behind. Ooh, is the story going to be interesting and have the Wisps sabotage Eggman on purpose as a twist? Giving Sonic Colors some consequences and him karma? Nope. Lame. This doesn't make any sense. What's forcing the Wisps to actually help Eggman, let alone humor Dodon Pa in the first place? What is the point of writing this plot from the game if you're not going to make it make more sense? So Eggman gets to use a ton of Wisps in a row to get way ahead. You'd think Dodon would want Eggman to lose for taking over the world and making it worse for him. But that makes sense. Unless, again, he's an alien, so why would he care? While it would be interesting to see Eggman use a bunch of wisps, an action scene would be a way better context to appreciate it than a silly race. I think it was impressive if he was fighting with them. Anyone can use wisps here. It's just a pointless race. And you know the heroes will never get injured anyways, so nothing he does to them will have impact. I get writing this to give the story a little bit of tension because now Eggman's in the lead, but we all know he's gonna lose. And even if he wins, so what? But it would be boring if it was always Sonic in the lead. But that's why you have him get hit by a ton of items. You could have tons of different characters being the lead. Even a Mario Kart race would probably be more interesting and exciting to watch. Because lots of people would be in the lead and you'd never know which item they were going to use next. It wouldn't be a foregone conclusion who's going to win. Rouge and Knuckles want to put aside their differences to take down Eggman in the race. Knuckles says that normally he'd be suspicious of her. I guess that's a good character moment, make him a little smart. Tails tells Sonic that they should try that slingshot move. He had the idea earlier. What took him so long to say this? He and Knuckles are gonna pull ahead so that Sonic will be able to zip into their magical slipstreams for a huge push forwards. Sonic compliments his idea as genius, when I'm sure any team is able to do it and it's in the rules. It's not Tails' unique idea. And he doesn't correct Sonic on that. He also calls Tails pal at least. Shadow says there's no reason his team can't execute the same tactic, only better. Why have him say this if he's gonna lose? Also, I thought his team did do that tactic. Rouge got a boost. Was he not paying attention? Then Knuckles says that Eggman's mega cheating as both of their teams at a huge disadvantage, saying mega cheating as if it's the 90s. Another reason I can't take what he's saying seriously is that Eggman's still in the same panel as Knuckles. Eggman barely looks like he's ahead of them at all. That doesn't even make sense because you'd think after all of those wisps he used, including the boost, he would be way ahead of everyone else. And Eggman has stupid dialogue. Sonic wants a speed, and then Shadow says not so fast, and Sonic asks if they talk about velocity too much. It's nice of him to say that he doesn't want to annoy anyone, but he should know that it's only him who talks about velocity too much. And somehow Shadow doesn't correct him. Sonic tells Eggman he'll see him past the finish line. Shadow says a foregone conclusion. Yeah, it is. I was giving the comic the benefit of the doubt and not trying to predict how it would end, but it got me so bored that I was uninvested enough to do that anyways. Eggman says that teamwork is cheating. He must have not done research on the rules of the race then, but I can understand why he'd feel like it's cheating. He doesn't have any teammates, so it's not fair to him indeed. It'd actually be more impressive if he won, because he has nobody, so he's the underdog. He confuses me at first, giving me some pause because he calls the heroes his mortal enemies, and then mentions an old vengeful robot that wants to destroy him. That's Omega, of course. So why isn't he one of his mortal enemies when he counts everyone else as one, including Rouge, who barely bothers him? Tails tells Knuckles to cover him while he makes the call. He says to Amy and Vector that they're up, and Rouge calls Tails clever as a fox. That'd be stereotyping in a world with fox people in it. Big and the Chow have forced cringe-worthy dialogue, and Blaze of all people is on Team Vector. I already knew about the what the fuck teammates in Team Rose, but Blaze and Silver being on Team Vector instead of Espio and Charmy is really random. I would say it was creative of Flynn, but I'm guessing he stole that from the game too, instead of coming up with something new, like an impressive writer. It's admirable of Blaze to say that monetary rewards are beneath the princess. But why is she on Planet Wisp doing this instead of being a princess then? She has no reason to be here. The Soul Emeralds decided to take her to Mobius. She could just go there whenever she wants apparently. That was the case in Sonic Generations. But who's running the kingdom without her? A writer that cared would explain that. It's not even explained that she's here because she's lonely and misses her friends. Vector wants Dodon Pa's prize money. I'm guessing Sonic will be a total asshole and not give the prize money he doesn't need to the Chaotix, even though they're poor, and he's a good guy. Logically, you'd think you'd have so much reward money from the governments and people that he'd be rich and just choose to live humbly. Silver also makes me wonder why he's here, since how would this guarantee a peaceful tomorrow? And sticking true to the games isn't an excuse, because if that's the case, why isn't Zavok here? Vector nicely says to Tails that he's glad he radioed him because they're getting bored waiting for the next race. I was getting bored before Eggman showed up. I kept waiting for something really interesting to happen. Tails says to Omochao that they need to get half of the crew ahead of Eggman and close in for a Wisp attack. I wish he explained that the reason they can't just let Eggman win a stupid race is that he'd use the prize money. And obviously they wouldn't want money in the hands of Eggman, a guy who wants to kill them. Because if they were just unfairly ganging up on him out of spite because he's their enemy, that'd make them look mean. It's just making me feel bad for him, and Tails' angry expression isn't helping there. I bet their primary motivation here is spite. But yeah, I'd rather the money go to Vector. Omochao's figured out the slingshot moves of the other cars. Amy says it's hammer time. Oh, but I don't see a giant hammer come out of her car and hit something. Even Sonic Boom showed that. I think I might have liked that episode more. At least in that, the main characters were all different from how they are in the games, which keeps things more interesting than they'd be otherwise. It's more engaging throughout, because it's not the games' universe, and the race felt completely justified compared to this, because Sonic Boom is usually a show where you see the characters hanging out as friends and just doing stuff as friends for fun, constantly. So at that point it felt kinda natural that they decided to have a race with each other, even if it was still a bit of a sudden leap. Knuckles says it feels good to have the whole crew together. Suddenly now he's the sentimental friendship appreciating type. That's sweet for an antisocial loner, to finally admit that. Silver isn't having fun. Maybe this wouldn't feel confusing if we saw Silver struggling in the race. He has no reason to be nervous right now. Tails says to everyone to lock and load. Rouge says she'll be picking up a few extra rings. But where are the rings? IDW will go to literally any length not to show us rings. Meanwhile, Archie and Fleetway do that all the time, and even Sadie M. I guess I like that big Mrs. Froggy because he sees a green Wisp. That shows how much he really cares about him. But then Blaze said she's all fired up. This is getting forced now. I was already suspecting this when Amy said it's hammer time out of nowhere, and then the hammer wasn't used. Is the writer literally just plopping the catchphrases of the characters from the game when you're playing them into a comic book story? Because having them say these things out of context is just forced, stilted, awkward. It makes them seem like robots. They say those sentences out of nowhere in the game because it's a game and they're nothing more than coding. It doesn't work in a story in a comic where I know they're able to say anything else. Since when does Blaze ever say this? She's supposed to be opposed to letting her anger out too much. Eggman gets passed by and surrounded, and he's portrayed as uncharacteristically foolish by assuming it'll work out. It seems like he's out of character from the menacing monster he usually is in IDW. Here, he's suddenly a cheerful buffoon obsessed with proving he's the coolest. This would make sense if it was established right away that this takes place in a parallel universe. Because this guy is quite a contrast to the guy who ordered the deaths of Whisper's friends. All of the Wisps get used against Eggman, and his car is caught in a colorful explosion, and I honestly wonder how he survived this. This would make sense if it was explained that he's like Robo-Robotnik, where if he dies, he wakes up in cyberspace and can go to another robot body, which took advantage of the fact that he's a brilliant scientist called Robotnik. But that'd be good writing. So instead he's burned, but not dead somehow. He had enough ring energy to not die from this, but not enough to be completely unharmed or heal from it right away. Explaining that he has rings to survive this would also be basic good writing. So of course that didn't happen. Another common sense bit of good writing is to not have Sonic win the race. On the bright side, thank God Shadow won too. There was a tie, and both of them say they won. Somehow, Dodon wasn't paying attention to who crossed the finish line. Even though he specifically said that he found Eggman amusing, and wanted to see what he would do. And they crossed the finish line a second after beating him. Most races have a high-speed camera at the finish line. You could at least have a robot station there. Sonic complains about how there's all this tech and no photo finish. Why are you pointing out your own plot hole? If there's all this tech, it's completely unbelievable that there'd be no photo finish. Dodon thinks that the explosion was beautiful because it's dangerous, since he's insane. Eggman somehow thinks he ruined Sonic and Shadow's race, but they both won. Dodon looks forward to Eggman's continued participation with the team because his passion against overwhelming odds is inspiring. He's too optimistic, got it. Everyone else in the race has that exact same passion. Sonic challenges Shadow to a winner-takes-all rematch during his victory lap. Should that actually matter, rules-wise? Why should I care if it won't affect who the prize money all goes to? Is the prize money going to be split between the two of them? Why the flying fuck does the story end there? Good writing would have Sonic say he's giving his half of the prize money to Vector because the Chaotix are poor and need it. That'd make him a hero, instead of just an ego-obsessed person. And after this, a giant amount of pages are wasted on worthless crap instead of new stories, because the writers aren't creatively inspired enough to come up with those. This issue by Caleb Doliner was boring even to someone who never played the game or watched all of his cutscenes. I kept wishing something actually fascinating or exciting would happen. Wouldn't it be interesting if the Eraser Djinn suddenly showed up? Don Pa never got kidnapped at the end, so that's a new twist. It was kind of commendable that both Sonic and Shadow won at the end. I'd never see that coming. But that was by the end, when it got cynical a while ago. Mainly because not finding out how Eggman cheated to get ahead so well was such a lame missed opportunity when the story could have been interesting instead. It could have focused on just him until that point. Sonic winning was brutally, painfully predictable, and it was common sense for even the most minimally impressive writer to not write him winning at this point. He's stuck in a car slower than himself, surrounded by Wisp power-ups that could kill him. I could buy that he'd lose the race. But I never predict that two people at once would win the race in a tie. And who else would tie with him than Shadow, a fellow speed-type racer? It would have been really creative and shocking if a non-speed type won. The story started out seeming to have a message that you don't have to be a speed-type car to win. But nope, they're just deluding themselves. It was such a foregone conclusion that Eggman would lose. The heroes unfairly ganged up on him to defeat him all at once with their Wisp powers, when a lot of them are on different teams from each other. So maybe it is cheating for them to work together. I kind of feel bad for Eggman. Wouldn't it have been exciting and shocking if Eggman actually won because he's a genius? And he'd spend the prize money on a dangerous robot army that the heroes would get hurt fighting in a later issue of the comic? Wouldn't that have been epic? Tails should have explained right away that that was what would happen if Eggman won, so that the stakes of the story would feel real immediately. But instead it just feels like the heroes don't want to let their enemy win a dumb race in a spin-off game because they hate him. It's a so what plot. So what if they're doing a race? They're lucky they all survived. It should have been explained that Eggman had rings to protect them from that explosion. How did the heroes know that would be the case? They were trying to kill him. I guess they just assumed he had rings. The story should have established why the heroes went to Planet Wisp and chose to do the race at the start. Maybe it's explained in the game, but don't keep that to the game. Not everyone watched its stupid racing game cutscenes. I just watched a parody of it. I just remember characters saying, "I don't think we can trust them." I started out uninvested in the issue and bored because it started out with narration. So I was worried that it would literally just be narration the whole time, promoting the game. And because I didn't know why on earth the heroes were wasting their time racing in a deadly race instead of doing hero stuff. They have better things to do than this. It should have been explained that they were following Eggman here, but they were surprised that he showed up. This story is just boring and doesn't make a lasting impression on me or anyone. Even someone who liked it would just say, "That was alright," and that's all they'd say about it. It is kinda cool that Shadow and Sonic won, but the story does nothing with it because we don't know what they'll spend their half of the prize money on, so I don't have a reason to care that they won. And we don't even see who won the victory lap. Let me guess, it was Sonic, because people like Sonic more. I was bored with its constant dialogue from the characters, dragging out the bare bones plot too uninteresting to describe while they're just driving ahead in their cars on a flat road. That's it. No one had a chance of getting injured, or was. That would have left an impression. All that happened in the actual plot was the heroes stupidly risked their lives in a dangerous race for no reason and beat Eggman in it. I think the racing issue in the Sonic Boom comic was more interesting than this. There was a wider, more creative variety of bad things happening to the heroes. It's just Wisps here. I have seen Team Sonic Racing Overdrive, so seeing the characters do a slipstream team boost or use Wisps made no impression on me when I saw that before. That's why an adaptation needs a lot of memorably original things to give it worth. So at least it had that ending to be original. And it was original that Eggman had no teammates instead of Zavik and whoever working for him. So it did fix the biggest problem people had with the story. Because we're not wondering why Zavik is working for him. Literally anybody could fix that problem though. That's common sense. I want more than just that. It made no actual sense that Eggman did come to the race without a team. He should have known he'd be ganged up on and have no chance. If he was allowed to write the story as not having Eggman be with Zavik, then he was allowed to take creative liberties with us. So why didn't he? Was there seriously nowhere else he could have had them drive around, besides a boring, grassy field? What about the haunted house course? How about a nice location, at least? How about music plants? The story felt like nothing but a pointless advertisement for a game that didn't even sell well compared to the All-Stars racing games. Which makes all the stories released just to advertise it hard to take seriously because they didn't even do their job. And somehow there's another Team Sonic racing story after this. So it better be different from it in general feeling from start to finish because the story was redundant as shit. But the only thing I'd really change about it is that Vector should have been given the prize money, and someone other than Sonic needed to win. And we needed to know why the heroes even came here and did the race that they would immediately find out would be dangerous. How about they're brainwashed into it? Is that too good writing? I was tolerating the story at first, I knew what I was getting into. But the thing that made me say it sucked was that we didn't know how Eggman got to that point when he said that he cheated so well to get there. And obviously seeing that would have been a more interesting story. And another thing that made me think it sucked was that Eggman said he was lucky the Wisps were even helping him. And then they proceeded to help him anyways. And there was no explanation for it. The writer knew it didn't make sense, but he decided to write it anyways. It missed the perfect opportunity for some satisfying karma against Eggman and consequences for Sonic Colors. If the Wisp did get back at him, he'd be out of the race, but then somebody else could have been the main antagonist. It's not explained that Dodon used magic to brainwash the Wisps into doing whatever he wants. He has to be a wizard if he's able to summon Wisp item boxes on the track. Eggman tried to liven up the race with some tension over whether he'd win, which was pointless because we knew he wouldn't anyways, and Team Dark was enough of a villain that we didn't want to win already without Eggman showing up. And he couldn't increase the tension and change things up by getting everyone to work together against him without the Wisp helping him. Except, wait a minute, he has an Eggmobile vehicle and is a mad scientist. Wouldn't it be more interesting and plausible if the way he got ahead in the race was that he used Barry's technology from his vehicle to do so? That adds some creativity to the story. And he had to have been using his own technology to get that far anyways because he said he cheated. And then it seemed like he was getting Wisps used for the first time. So he wasn't using Wisps at that point.